When my ex-wife's attorney stood up and demanded 8 years of back child support, I didn't say a word. I just opened my briefcase and pulled out the folder I'd been preparing for 6 months. The judge's expression when she started reading those canceled checks, I'll never forget it. Welcome to Cheating Story Exposed. Real stories, real justice, no sugarcoating. You know what? I notice many of you watching haven't hit that subscribe button yet. Here's the thing, we drop stories like this every single day. Stories about people who got played, got smart, and got even. If you want to see how these situations really end, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. My name is Robert Mitchell, and for 8 years I was called every name in the book. Deadbeat, abandoner, the father who walked away, but I never walked away. I paid every single month, and I kept every single receipt. Let me take you back to where this started. March 2015. That's when my marriage to Catherine fell apart. We'd been together for 12 years, married for 9. We had 2 kids, Dylan, who was 7 at the time, and Megan, who was 5. The divorce wasn't pretty. Catherine wanted it, I didn't, but I wasn't going to fight to stay where I wasn't wanted. The divorce proceedings took 11 months. During that time, Catherine's attorney was aggressive about child support. I understood. I wanted to support my kids. The court ordered me to pay $1,500 per month, plus half of all medical expenses and extracurricular activities. Fair enough. I had a good job as a project manager for a construction company. I could afford it. Here's where things get interesting. Catherine insisted, and I mean absolutely insisted, that I pay her directly. Not through the state system, not through automatic wage garnishment, but directly to her. Her reasoning was that the state system was slow, bureaucratic, and she needed the money on time for the kids. She painted this picture of being the struggling single mom who couldn't wait 2 weeks for the state to process payments. My attorney at the time advised me to insist on going through the state system. He said it was cleaner, more documented, less room for disputes. But I was trying to be accommodating. I was trying to show that even though our marriage failed, I could be reasonable about co-parenting, so I agreed to direct payments. Big mistake. Huge, but I wasn't completely naive. From day one, I paid by check, never cash. Always checks from my personal checking account made out to Catherine Mitchell with child support written clearly in the memo line, and I photographed every single check before I gave it to her. Front and back before she ever touched it. The first year went fine. I'd write the check on the 1st of every month. Catherine would usually pick it up when she dropped the kids off for my weekends, or I'd drop it in her mailbox if our schedules didn't align. She'd deposit the checks, they'd clear my account, and life moved forward. I saw my kids every other weekend and 1 evening per week. It wasn't enough, but it was what the custody agreement allowed. Dylan was getting into baseball, Megan was doing dance classes. I went to every game, every recital I was allowed to attend. I paid for half of everything, just like the order stated. But I started noticing something around year 2. Catherine began making comments, little remarks. Things like, must be nice to have so much disposable income, or some of us actually have to sacrifice for our children. I'd remind her that I was paying support, that I was covering my half of their activities. She'd just give me this look, this knowing, almost smug look that I couldn't quite read. Then the comments got more pointed. She started telling mutual friends that I wasn't living up to my obligations, that she was struggling financially because I was inconsistent with support. When friends would mention it to me, confused because they knew I had a good job, I'd tell them I was paying exactly what the court ordered, every single month on time. But Catherine was building a narrative. I could feel it happening. She'd mentioned to her family that she had to cover unexpected expenses for the kids because I forgot to pay my share. She'd sigh heavily when picking the kids up, making comments about how hard it was to do everything alone. Meanwhile, I had bank statements showing $1,500 leaving my account on the 1st of every month like clockwork. In year 3, Catherine got engaged to a guy named Trevor. He worked in sales, drove a nice car, seemed to have money. I was happy for her, honestly. I thought maybe if she was settled and happy, the weird tension around support payments would ease up. It got worse. Now Catherine started making comments about how Trevor was stepping up where I had stepped back. She told the kids that Trevor was helping provide for them because Daddy couldn't do it alone. My 7-year-old son asked me why Trevor had to buy his baseball equipment when that was supposed to be my job. I explained that I'd sent the check for his equipment to his mother weeks ago. Dylan just looked confused. I started keeping more detailed records, not just the checks, but receipts for everything. Every piece of equipment, every activity fee, every medical copay. I created a spreadsheet. Column 1, date. Column 2, check number. Column 3, amount. Column 4, date cleared. I updated it religiously. My friends thought I was being paranoid. My brother told me I was holding on to anger from the divorce, but something in my gut told me this documentation would matter. I couldn't explain why. I just knew year 4, Catherine and Trevor got married. They bought a house in a nicer neighborhood. The kids transferred to better schools. Catherine quit her job as a medical receptionist to stay home. She posted on social media about being a full-time mom, about having the flexibility to really be present for Dylan and Megan. I was glad my kids were in a good situation. Really, I was. But the narrative Catherine was spinning got more aggressive. She told her church group that she was raising the kids essentially alone with minimal support from their father. She posted vague Facebook statuses about deadbeat dads and the burden of carrying everything. People started looking at me differently. Parents at Dylan's baseball games. Teachers at parent conferences. I'd show up to support my son and I could feel the judgment, the whispers. That's the dad who doesn't really help out. I thought about confronting Catherine. I thought about posting my bank statements online to prove I was paying, but my attorney advised against it. He said it would look petty, that fighting about it publicly would only hurt the kids. So I stayed quiet and kept documenting. Year 5 was when things escalated legally. Catherine filed a motion to increase child support. Her reasoning was that I'd received significant raises at work, and the kids were getting older with more expenses. Both things were true. I didn't fight the increase. The court raised my support to $1,900 per month. Fine. I adjusted my budget and kept paying, but in that court filing, Catherine's attorney included a paragraph that made my blood run cold. It stated that I had been inconsistent with support payments over the past several years, often paying late or missing payments entirely. It claimed Catherine had been covering the shortfalls from her own limited resources. That was a lie. A complete, documented lie. I had 5 years of canceled checks proving otherwise. But the motion wasn't about proving I'd missed payments. It was just included as supporting narrative about my character. The judge didn't require proof of that claim because the motion was only about the increase amount, not about past payment history. That's when I realized Catherine was building toward something bigger. This wasn't just about her pride or controlling the narrative. She was documenting a false history. She was laying groundwork. I started being even more careful. I took photos of myself handing checks to Catherine. I got a small notebook and had her sign a receipt every time she took a check. She thought I was being ridiculous. She'd roll her eyes and say things like, "Really, Robert? You think I'm going to claim you didn't pay?" But she'd sign. Every time, year 6, Catherine started canceling my visitation. At first, it was for reasonable things. Megan had a dance competition that fell on my weekend. Dylan was invited to a friend's birthday party. Could we swap weekends? Of course, I was flexible. I wanted my kids to live their lives, but then the cancellations got more frequent. Catherine would text me the day before my weekend and say the kids were busy or tired or didn't feel like coming over. When I'd push back, she'd accuse me of not prioritizing what the kids wanted. She'd say I was being selfish. My time with Dylan and Megan dropped from every other weekend to maybe twice a month, then once a month. The kids started feeling distant. Dylan was 12 now, getting into that age where spending time with Dad wasn't cool anymore. Megan was 10 and wrapped up in her friend group and activities. I tried to stay connected. I went to every game and recital I was told about. But Catherine started forgetting to tell me about events. I'd find out from social media that Dylan's team had won the championship game. I'd see photos of Megan's dance recital that I never knew was happening, and through it all I paid, every single month, $1,900, check number after check number, photo after photo. My records were immaculate. Year 7, Catherine filed another motion, this time to modify custody. She claimed the kids had naturally aged out of wanting to spend time with me, and that forced visitation was causing them stress. She wanted to change the custody agreement to at the children's discretion. I fought that one. I hired a better attorney. We went to mediation. In the mediation, Catherine's attorney brought up the support payments again. He said I'd been unreliable financially, which had caused Catherine to shield the children from my instability. He said the kids associated time with me with financial anxiety because their mother had to worry about whether I'd contribute each month. My attorney demanded proof. Catherine's attorney said they'd provide it at the hearing. They never did. But the mediator seemed to accept the narrative. The custody agreement was modified to give me 1 weekend per month and 1 dinner per week, subject to the children's availability and preference. I was losing my kids, not because of anything I'd done wrong as a father, but because of a lie about money. A systematic, carefully built lie. That's when I decided to prepare for the inevitable. I knew what was coming. Catherine wasn't just building a narrative for social reasons or custody reasons. She was building toward a financial claim. She was going to accuse me of never paying, and she was going to demand back support. I spent 6 months organizing everything. I requested copies of all my canceled checks from my bank. I created a binder with dividers for each year. Each month had its own page with the check copy, the bank statement showing the withdrawal, and the corresponding statement showing when the check had cleared. I had Catherine's signatures on the receipt book showing she'd received each check. I had my own photos of the handoffs. I had 96 checks, 8 years, 12 months each, 96 pieces of irrefutable proof. In year 8, it happened. Catherine filed a motion for 8 years of back child support. She claimed that I had never paid her directly as ordered. She said she'd been supporting the children entirely on her own with help from her husband Trevor, and that I owed her 8 years of payments plus interest. The amount she was claiming, $144,000. Her motion included affidavits from friends saying they'd never seen me give Catherine money. It included her bank statements showing no deposits from me. It included a statement from Trevor saying he'd been financially supporting my children since they'd gotten together. It included statements from the kids themselves, now 14 and 12, saying they didn't remember me ever being consistent about money. It was a masterpiece of deception. And it almost worked. My attorney was shocked. He'd been practicing family law for 20 years and had never seen anything quite like it. The calculated nature of it, the years of preparation, the false narrative building in custody proceedings to support the eventual financial claim. But I had prepared too. The hearing was scheduled for August 15th. I showed up in my best suit with my briefcase and my binder. Catherine showed up with Trevor, her attorney, and a confident smirk. She thought she had me. She thought I'd either roll over and settle or show up unprepared and she'd get a default judgment. Judge Patricia Hernandez presided. She was known for being thorough and fair, but also for not tolerating nonsense in her courtroom. Catherine's attorney, a guy named Ronald Shapiro, went first. He was polished. He laid out the case methodically. 8 years of payments never made. A struggling mother doing everything herself. A father who'd abdicated his financial responsibility while maintaining the facade of involvement through occasional visits. He submitted Catherine's bank statements. He pointed out that there were no deposits from me. He submitted her financial affidavits showing how she and Trevor had covered all expenses. He painted me as a man who'd been so checked out from my children's lives that I hadn't even bothered to meet my basic legal obligations. It was a compelling argument if you didn't know the truth. Judge Hernandez looked at me. Mr. Mitchell, this is a serious accusation. How do you respond to the claim that you've never paid child support as ordered? I stood up. Your Honor, I've paid every penny I've been ordered to pay on time every single month for 8 years. I have documentation of every payment. Shapiro actually laughed. Your Honor, Mr. Mitchell's bank statements will show withdrawals, certainly. But there's no proof those withdrawals were paid to my client. He could have been paying anyone anything. The burden is on him to prove the money went to Ms. Mitchell, and he can't. I opened my briefcase. May I approach, Your Honor? Judge Hernandez nodded. I walked up to her bench and set down my binder. It was 3 inches thick. Your Honor, this binder contains copies of 96 canceled checks made out to Catherine Mitchell, with child support in the memo line. Each check has been endorsed and deposited by Ms. Mitchell. I have the corresponding bank statements showing when each check cleared. I also have a receipt book signed by Ms. Mitchell acknowledging receipt of each payment. The judge opened the binder. She flipped to the first page. January 2015. Check number 1847 made out to Catherine Mitchell for $1,500. Child support written clearly in the memo. The back of the check showed Catherine's signature and a deposit stamp from her bank dated January 5, 2015. Judge Hernandez flipped through several more pages, each one identical. Check, memo line, signature, deposit date. She looked up at Catherine. Ms. Mitchell, do you deny that this is your signature on these checks? Catherine's confident expression faltered. I would need to see them more closely. The judge turned the binder around and slid it across the bench toward Catherine's table. Please examine them. Shapiro grabbed the binder first. He started flipping through pages. His face went from confident to confused to pale. He leaned over and whispered urgently to Catherine. She was shaking her head, but I couldn't hear what she was saying. This went on for maybe 3 minutes. The courtroom was completely silent. Finally, Shapiro closed the binder. He stood up. Your Honor, I need a moment to consult with my client. Take your time, counselor. They stepped out into the hallway. Through the courtroom door window, I could see Shapiro gesturing, Catherine shaking her head adamantly, Trevor looking confused and angry. After about 10 minutes, only Shapiro came back in. Catherine and Trevor stayed in the hallway. Your Honor, Shapiro said, and his voice had lost all its polish. I apologize to the court and to opposing counsel. I was provided with incorrect information by my client. It appears Mr. Mitchell does have documentation of payments made. I need to request a continuance to review these documents and reassess our position. Judge Hernandez was not pleased. Mr. Shapiro, you brought an action claiming 8 years of unpaid support totaling over $140,000. Are you telling me you didn't verify your client's claims before filing? Your Honor, I relied on the financial documents provided by my client. I had no reason to believe. You had no reason to verify. The judge's tone was sharp. This is a serious accusation that could have resulted in wage garnishment, liens, even jail time for Mr. Mitchell. And you filed it without verification. Shapiro looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. I apologize to the court, Your Honor. And to Mr. Mitchell, Shapiro turned to me. I apologize, Mr. Mitchell. I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. I was angry, but more than that, I was vindicated. Judge Hernandez looked at the binder again. Mr. Shapiro, I'm going to take a 15-minute recess. When we return, you're going to explain to me how your client deposited 96 checks for child support and then claimed under oath that she received no support payments. And you're going to explain why I shouldn't refer this to the state bar and the district attorney's office for fraud. She banged her gavel and left the bench. Shapiro grabbed his briefcase and walked out. He didn't come back. After recess, Judge Hernandez returned to a courtroom that now only contained me, my attorney, Catherine, and Trevor. No Shapiro. Where's your attorney, Ms. Mitchell? The judge asked. Catherine's voice was small. He told me he couldn't represent me anymore. I see. Do you want to request a continuance to retain new counsel? I don't think any other attorney is going to help me, are they? Judge Hernandez looked at her for a long moment. Ms. Mitchell, you filed a motion claiming you'd received no child support for 8 years. Mr. Mitchell has provided documentation showing 96 separate payments, all deposited by you, totaling over $150,000 over 8 years. Can you explain this discrepancy? Catherine didn't answer. She just sat there, staring at the table. Ms. Mitchell, you filed this motion under penalty of perjury. Do you understand the seriousness of that? I understand, Catherine whispered. Your motion for back child support is denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering you to pay Mr. Mitchell's attorney fees for defending against this frivolous claim. I'm also referring this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation of possible perjury and fraud. She paused, then continued. Additionally, given that you've made false claims about Mr. Mitchell's financial support, I'm ordering a review of the custody arrangement. It seems to me that if you've been willing to lie about finances, you might have been willing to lie about other things. Mr. Mitchell, if you wish to file a motion to modify custody, you may do so. Catherine started crying. Trevor looked shell-shocked. My attorney was scribbling notes furiously. This hearing is adjourned. Judge Hernandez banged her gavel. As we were packing up, Catherine approached me. Her eyes were red, her voice desperate. Robert, please, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Please don't take the kids from me. I looked at her. This woman I'd been married to for 9 years, the mother of my children, who'd spent 8 years methodically building a false narrative to destroy me financially and separate me from my kids. Catherine, I said quietly, I paid you every single month. I showed up for every event I knew about. I never badmouthed you to the kids. I tried to be a good co-parent even when you made it nearly impossible. And you tried to send me to jail and take another $140,000 from me based on complete lies. I know, I'm sorry, Trevor's business has been struggling and we needed. You needed money, so you tried to frame me for being a deadbeat dad. She didn't have an answer for that. I'm not going to try to take custody from you, I said, but I am going to file for 50-50 custody, equal time, and I'm going to tell Dylan and Megan the truth about what happened here. They're old enough to understand that I've been paying support all along and that you lied about it. I left the courtroom. My attorney followed, grinning. That was the most satisfying case I've handled in a decade, he said. The aftermath was messy. Catherine was investigated by the DA's office but ultimately not prosecuted. They said it would be hard to prove criminal intent versus a misunderstanding, which I thought was ridiculous given the 8 years of preparation, but whatever. Her friends and family were horrified when the truth came out. The people who'd been whispering about me being a deadbeat suddenly got very quiet. Catherine's social media went dark. She and Trevor stopped going to their church. I filed for custody modification. Given the judge's concerns about Catherine's dishonesty and given that the kids were now older and could express their preferences, I was awarded 50-50 custody. Week on, week off. It took time to rebuild my relationship with Dylan and Megan. They'd spent years hearing their mother's version of events, but I sat them both down and explained everything. I showed them the binder. I explained that I'd been paying all along, that I'd never abandoned them financially, that every dollar I'd been ordered to pay had been paid. Megan cried. Dylan got angry, not at me, at their mother. I had to work hard to make sure they understood that their mother wasn't a villain, just someone who'd made really terrible choices. I didn't want them to hate her. I just wanted them to know the truth. That was 3 years ago now. Dylan is 17, about to graduate high school. Megan is 15. We've rebuilt our relationship. They split time evenly between Catherine's house and mine. We have dinner together 3 or 4 nights a week when they're with me. I coach Dylan's baseball team. I'm involved in Megan's college prep planning. Catherine and I are civil. Barely. She sends child support requests through a court app now, everything documented through the state system. Trevor's business apparently recovered. They're still together, still in the same house, but the trust is gone, not just between Catherine and me, but in her broader community. People remember. When you accuse someone of something that's serious, based on lies that coordinated and deliberate, people don't forget. I still have that binder. It sits on a shelf in my home office. Sometimes I look at it and think about what would have happened if I hadn't been paranoid enough to document everything. What if I'd paid cash? What if I hadn't taken photos? What if I hadn't kept the receipts? I would have lost. I would have been painted as a deadbeat dad. I might have gone to jail. I definitely would have lost even more custody time with my kids, and I would have owed $140,000 for payments I'd already made. The system almost failed me. If Catherine's lie had been just a little bit simpler, if she'd been just a little less greedy, if she'd claimed I'd only missed a few months instead of 8 entire years, I might not have been able to prove my case so definitively. People ask me what I learned from all this. Here's what I tell them: document everything. I don't care if it feels paranoid or petty. If you're dealing with an ex-spouse, a business partner, anyone who has the potential to make false claims against you, document everything. Keep receipts. Take photos. Get signatures. Use checks, not cash. Create a paper trail, because someday someone might try to rewrite history. And when they do, you need to be able to prove what actually happened. I also learned that vindication, while satisfying, doesn't undo the years of stress and pain. Those 8 years when people looked at me like I was a bad father, I can't get those back. The time I lost with my kids because Catherine poisoned the well, I can't get that back. The stress, the anxiety, the nights lying awake wondering if I was crazy for documenting everything, all of that took a toll. But I won. In the end, truth won. And that has to count for something. Dylan asked me recently why I never gave up, why I kept paying and documenting even when it seemed like no one believed me. I told him that being a good father isn't about getting credit or recognition. It's about doing what's right consistently, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I paid because those were my kids and they deserved support. I documented because I knew someday I'd need to prove I'd done my job. And when that day came, I was ready. If you're in a situation like mine, if someone is building a false narrative about you, if you sense that lies are being told and history is being rewritten, start documenting now. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now, take photos, keep receipts, save emails and texts. Create a timeline, because the person trying to destroy your reputation isn't going to document the truth. That's your job. And when your day in court comes, you want to walk in with a 3-inch binder full of canceled checks with their signature on the back. That's what saved me. 96 pieces of paper with Catherine Mitchell's signature on each one. 96 times she endorsed a check for child support and deposited it, while telling everyone I'd never paid a dime. The judge believed the paper trail, not the narrative. And that made all the difference. My case is over now. Catherine's lie is exposed. My kids know the truth. My reputation is restored, but I'll never forget walking into that courtroom not knowing if my documentation would be enough. Not knowing if the judge would believe me or believe the woman with tears in her eyes claiming to be a struggling single mother. Justice isn't guaranteed. Truth doesn't always win, but documentation gives truth a fighting chance. And sometimes that's all you need. That binder sits on my shelf as a reminder that I fought for my kids, a reminder that patience and preparation pay off, a reminder that lies, no matter how carefully constructed, eventually crumble when confronted with proof. Catherine tried to rewrite 8 years of history, but every check I'd written, every signature she'd put on the back, every deposit stamp from her bank, all of it told the real story. And in the end, that's the story the judge believed. If you're going through something similar, hang in there. Document everything, be patient, be strategic. And when your moment comes, when you get to present your evidence and watch the lies collapse, it will be worth every moment of preparation. Mine came when I set that binder on the judge's bench and watched Catherine's attorney's face go pale, when he walked out of the courtroom and never came back, when the judge looked at Catherine and asked her to explain how she'd deposited 96 checks and then claimed she'd received nothing. That moment made 8 years of careful record-keeping worth it. That moment saved me from financial ruin and helped me rebuild my relationship with my kids. That moment proved that sometimes the good guys do win. You just have to make sure you have the receipts to prove it.